Hi there, welcome to the smartest lesson on musical elements. Top 5 elements. Number 1, time, accents and syncopation. So we learned about accent in the smarter level. Accents are when you have the first beat of the bar is louder than all the other beats. But you can put accents anywhere. This little arrowhead at the top of the note is a symbol for accent, and what that means is that we play that note louder than the other notes around it. So the word syncopation can mean accents in odd places. So instead of when you expect them, they can be in between beats, not just on the first beat of the bar. So the second accent is on the second half of the second beat. So these two eighth notes make up one beat, and then the next two make up the second beat, and the accent is there on that second one, on the second half of the second beat. It's a 4-beat time signature. That means there are 4 beats. These notes are eighth notes. They fit into 2 of them, make 1 beat. So there's 1 beat there, second beat there, third beat there, and the 4th beat there. You've got the same rhythm pattern there in the second bar, and then this note is one long note that lasts for 4 beats, which fills up the whole bar. Let's have a listen. So I hope you could hear that the notes with the little arrowheads above or below them were given an extra bit of volume, an extra bit of weight when the guitar was being played. Here's another example. The second and third notes start between the beats and hold on over the beat. So the second and third notes, so we've got 3 beats to the bar this time, and we go from half a beat there. So that second note starts on the second half of the beat. It lasts for a whole beat. And then this one starts in the middle of the second beat. Sounds very complicated, but let's just have a listen. So basically the music just sounds a little bit jazzy, a little bit interesting, a little bit quirky. The rhythm and the accents and the syncopation make the music sound more interesting. Second element, timbre. Timbre is how different instruments sound different from each other, how a violin sounds different from a flute, how a guitar sounds different from a drum, how an electric guitar sounds different from a classical guitar. Today we're going to look at how timbre works with groups of instruments, or what musicians call ensembles. So this is a true or false quiz. These groups of instruments usually have mainly the same types of instruments or voices in them. So we want to know if that's true or false. So with a string orchestra, that's an orchestra where all the instruments are string instruments, like an orchestra with just the violins and the violas and the cellos and the double basses. It's done for you. It's true, because they're all string instruments, so they're all played, they all have the same types of sounds. Now you can click on the little magnifying glass to get an extra clue. There's a picture of the instruments. They all look very similar, just different sizes. So, brass band. That's a band where all the instruments are made from brass. Let's just check the clue. There's some pictures. They all look like you blow the instruments. So let's see if that's true. The only thing I would say about that is usually in a brass band you have some percussion instruments as well. You might have a drum kit as well. African drummers. Let's click on the clue. There's a whole set of African drums, or djembes. They all look the same, so that's going to be true. A rock group. Let's have a look at the clue for that. So what have we got there? We've got a bass guitar, we've got a drum kit, and we've got a vocalist, a singer. So those are all a bit mixed up really. So do they have the same types of instruments or voices? I don't think they do, so that's going to be false. String quartet. So strings again. Quartet 4, a group of 4, an ensemble of 4 string players. Let's just check the clue. And there they are. 2 violins, going from left to right, 2 violins, slightly bigger viola, and a cello. Those are the instruments that make up a string quartet. So it is true. Recorder consort. A consort is a very old name for a group. Recorders have been around for hundreds of years, and during Elizabethan times, that's Queen Elizabeth I, so around 1600, recorders were very popular. But they do come in lots of different sizes. They're all going to sound like they belong together. So I think this is true. Remember, we are trying to work out whether the groups of instruments or ensembles usually have mainly the same types of instruments or voices in them. Symphony orchestra. Now that is the word for the big types of orchestras that you might see in a concert on TV or film, or if you're lucky enough to actually go to a big concert hall somewhere in this country or maybe even in another country. You'll see that there's lots and lots of different types of instruments in an orchestra. And there's the clue. Too many instruments to have individual pictures. Percussion at the back, woodwind and brass in front of them, and then the whole string section at the front. So I think they don't have mainly the same types of instruments, so that's going to be false. The gamelan is a group of instruments that comes from a place called Indonesia, and it has a whole mixture of instruments. A lot of them do sound metallic, made from metal, so the answer is false. Next one, jazz band. Well, jazz bands can be quite a mixture of different instruments. There we have saxophone, piano, drum kit and double bass, so I think the answer is false. A choir. Now, what are the instruments or voices in a choir? They're all voices, aren't they? So I think they're all the same types of voices. That's true. So what we have are groups that can be made of similar instruments, all of the ones in this list, with the ticks in the true column. And you can have groups of instruments and musicians that are mixed instruments. So from different families of instruments, different types of instruments. For the third element, we're looking at pitch again, and we want to understand what scales are all about. Scales are the groups of notes used in a song or piece of music. So every song or piece of music will have a set number of notes that, if you put them together in order, would make up a scale. Played from lowest to highest, or ascending, then back down again, descending. They are like ladders of notes. So in my song, I might have all of those notes, but in a different order to make up the melody. And I might use some of those notes, like say C, E, and G, to make up the chords. So C, E, and G played together would make up a C chord. E, G, and B played together would make up an E minor chord, and so on. So the music is made up from whichever scale that the composer chooses. So if you've done the Smart Level lesson on sounds, you might remember the flute, and this plays the scale. And when the flute plays a tune, it plays all of those notes but in a different order. Element number 4 is texture. And there are 3 new words to learn here: monophonic, homophonic, and polyphonic. These little graphics might help to explain what those 3 words mean. Monophonic is when you just get one melody. So if I whistled a little tune, that would be monophonic. Mono means one. So if I had an instrument like a flute and I just played a melody on it, or if I played one note at a time on a keyboard or a guitar, then I would be making up a piece of monophonic music. Monophonic texture has only one layer of sound. So some examples: when you might hear monks singing in a medieval chant in unison, which means all at the same pitch. So there's lots of them, but they're all singing the same notes together. So that's one layer. And an accompanied piece of music for flute. If you didn't know, a flute can only play one note at a time. So if there's no accompaniment, if there are no other instruments, then that music's going to be monophonic. The second word was homophonic. Homo means the same. So homophonic texture has many parts, but they all change notes at the same time with the same rhythm. So together. So when you play chords, if you think these notes are 3 different notes from a chord, when the chords change, if that's the only thing that's going on in the music, then that music is homophonic. These look like they just change as chords and move up together and keep the same distance apart between the different pitches of the chord, but the notes don't have to do that. They can spread out so that the top note of the chords each time can form a nice melody. And a really good example of that are hymns, where high and low voices sing the same rhythm but different notes of the chord, or harmony. Harmony is another word for the chords. We think of chords as being played on one instrument like a guitar or a keyboard, where we play all the notes together to make the chords. But if you've got lots of different melodic instruments playing together, different pitches, they're making the chords between them. So the melody is normally the highest part. It doesn't have to be, but it normally is. And all the other parts sing the same rhythm underneath. The third type of texture that I'd like you to know about is something called polyphonic. Poly means many. Like a polygon has many sides. So polyphonic texture has 2 or more parts that could be separate tunes on their own. Composers can make them work together in some very clever ways, also known as counterpoint. So if you look at these 2 little layers here, the top one has a melody, it's got a different rhythm, some long notes and some short notes. And this pattern, the blue pattern, has a completely different rhythm and pitch, but it's one note at a time and the pattern's moving up and down. One way that composers make them work together is when you have a long note in one part and then in another instrument or another part, that's when it has shorter notes, so it's moving along, the melody's moving and it's creating some interest, and then they can swap over. So now we have a long note in the red and shorter notes in the blue, and that kind of carries on and mixes up throughout the piece, and those notes all work together. So some of the clever ways that composers can use to create interesting polyphonic music. Here's a form of music called a fugue. Fugues by J.S. Bach are very clever polyphonic pieces. They involve imitation or follow the leader. So one player will start off playing a melody, and then when they finish their first line of the melody, another part will take up that melody, and that can carry on with all the parts playing follow the leader and doing interesting things to accompany the melody. And when I say part, it doesn't have to be on different instruments. Bach wrote quite a few fugues mainly for keyboard instruments, so the player would have to play all the different parts using the fingers, using both hands. And for the pipe organ, Bach worked in a lot of churches where there were pipe organs built in, so they would have to use their feet as well to play the melody. They got very complicated, and Bach was an absolute genius at writing them. They are very difficult to play. You can play them on guitars or keyboards or violin. Bach also wrote some two-part inventions that make good use of combining two different tunes together. So a two-part invention, an invention is just like a piece of music that you make up. It's quite a good word for a composition, really. A simple example is a round. Like you may know Frère Jacques, and the way that's often sung is one person will start singing the tune. When they get to the second line, another person will start the tune from the beginning. And you might have 4 different people singing the tune starting at different times. The element number 5 is ideas and patterns, and today we're looking at form. Composers in the past have fitted their musical ideas, melodies, rhythms, and everything else into overall patterns called forms. All forms are to do with repeating ideas and contrasting them with different ones. A is used to show the first idea or tune. B will show a different tune and C a different one again. A repeat of a letter shows the return of that tune. Examples are binary form, AABB, used by Baroque composers like Johann Sebastian Bach, and sonata form, used by most of the famous composers from about 1750 and popular until the beginning of the 1900s. Here are 2 more popular forms that have been around a long time and they're still useful today. So ternary form, so you have first idea, first melody, then second idea, B, and then the first one repeats again. A bit like the chorus and verses in a song. Another form is called rondo form. The A section keeps coming back round. In between each A section there is something different, an episode. So you get A, then you get something different, then you get a repeat of A, and then something else different, C, and so on. There can be any number of different episodes, A, B, A, C, A, D, A, E, A, F, etc. This version is symmetrical, a kind of arch shape with B repeated. And then here's another new word, coda. The last section is often a coda or tailpiece added to give the piece a good ending. And you'll find out more about rondo form in the lesson on form. And now for the quiz. We're going to see how much you remember. You can always rewind the video to check anything you've missed or forgotten. You can pause the questions to give yourself time to write down the answers, write a full sentence, write the question and then the answer, or you can just write the number of the question and the letter. So question 1, the symbol that we put above or below a note to make it an accent is, what's a question mark, backwards facing arrowhead, forwards facing arrowhead, and the @ sign. Which one do you think it was, if you can remember? So question number 2, accents in odd places, like in between the beats, make the music sound slower, faster, accented, or syncopated. Question number 3, which of these groups is made up of the same types of instruments? A rock group, a symphony orchestra, a string quartet, or a jazz band? Question number 4. Ladders of notes are known as ladders, scales, pitches, or ascending. Question number 5. Ascending means going up, going down, going out, staying in. Question number 6. Descending means going up, going down, going out, or staying in. When a piece of music only has one single layer of sound, one single layer of sound, it is called A, polyphonic, B, homophonic, C, texture, or D, monophonic. Question number 8. The texture that has all of its layers moving with the same rhythm is called polyphonic, homophonic, texture, or monophonic. Question number 9. The texture that has layers that are separate tunes is called A, polyphonic, B, homophonic, C, texture, or D, monophonic. And finally, question number 10, ABA form is called A, binary form, that's a two-part form, B, ternary form, that's the three-part form, C, rondo form, where A keeps coming around again and again, or D, song form, that's when you'd have verses and choruses. So now you've done all the questions, let's go back and check the answers. So the symbol that we need is the forward facing little arrowhead. C, well done, correct. Question number 2, accents in odd places. This was a new word and it's a word called syncopated. So that's when odd accents are put in between the beats. Question number 3, which of these groups is made up of the same types of instruments? Rock group, that's like singers and guitars and drum kit, so it's not that one. Symphony orchestra, percussion, brass, woodwind, strings, nope. So not that one. String quartet is when you have the violin, the viola and the cello, two violins, one viola and a cello. So it could be that one, they're all the same family of instruments. And the jazz band, just to check, is the one where you have piano, drum kit, double bass, saxophone, maybe trumpet. So I think it's C, string quartet. Yes. Question number 4. Ladders of notes are known as ladders, scales, pitches or ascending. I think it's scales. Well done. Ascending means going up. And for question number 6, descending means going down. Question number 7, when a piece of music only has one single layer of sound, it is called monophonic. Mono means one. Phonic means sound, so one sound, one layer of sound. Correct. The texture that has all its layers moving with the same rhythm is called homophonic. Homo means all the same or together. The texture that has layers that are separate tunes is called many layers, separate tunes, polyphonic. Poly means many. Well done if you got those last 3 questions. Quite tricky. And finally, question number 10, ABA form is 3-part form, 3 parts there, ternary form. So well done if you got a lot of those right. Don't forget you can always just double check and go through the lesson again or rewind bits of the video to find out the bits that you weren't sure on. And that was quite a demanding lesson with lots of new ideas. So well done for concentrating and thank you for learning.